Scott, you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Hey, thanks again for joining us for another episode of Triple Play. Please remember to
Like and subscribe.
of course, and make sure you're sharing. A little side note, we're almost to 20,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you're not a subscriber yet, please do get us over that 20,000 hump. And we're real close to being monetized on Spotify. So if you're a Spotify person and haven't subscribed on that one, do it for us. That'll help us out. In the meantime, if you have any financial needs, make sure you guys reach out to Resource One and Andy McCallum and his team at 636-458-1798. And if you need any tech work done, like our cool intro, outro website, you can reach out to CS Design at 573-436-3717. They take care of all of that. And we've got cool merch on the website. So if you haven't already checked it out, it is Father's Day, or when this drops, it'll be after Father's Day. But if you haven't checked it out, sign balls, cool stuff, that helps support us as well. So
It might be tough this year to get it out unless you overnight it, but for Father's Day, you can give them a fishing hat like that.
yeah, fishing hat, or get them a sign ball by
That's right.
son and dad combo of Scott and Andy Van Slyke. So
If you're into that kind of thing. Who we got today?
Well,
we got today?
We've got an awesome guest today. So we got Mark Harder. Mark Harder is a realtor for those who are in the real estate side, like myself, made a name for himself on that. And then we're going to find out a little bit about his story, but got into local politics and has been a county councilman for how long?
Be 8 years.
8 years. So representing us, and somebody who's been a great voice on the council. So we're excited to have him. And he just made a new announcement, kind of going to that next part of his political career. So I don't want to take all the thunder away. We'll let him talk about all that, and we'll go from there. So Mark, give us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? Were you from St. Louis? Where'd you go to high school? Which is obviously the St. Louis question. So
Sure. Well, thank you for having me on today. Yes, I grew up in North County, up by UMSL, and went to Christian Brothers College High School for high school, and then went to UMSL for college, majored in political science and marketing, and graduated from there back in, I
love that.
Yeah, a little bit in the last century. So, and went to work for a number of different companies here in town over the years. And then about 20 years ago, I decided that I wanted to work for myself. So I started a real estate business and have been doing that ever since. I'm currently with Remax Results here in St. Louis, West St. Louis County at the Chesterfield office. And, supported my family that way. I've got 2 sons, 3 grandchildren, 2 boys and a girl. And my wife and I have been married 31 years right now. So she says it's 35, but it's 31. So we
That's how it feels.
Yeah, it's how that feels thing. Well, especially being married to somebody that's self-employed and then getting into the political realm. I joined a number of years. Well, about 10 years ago, I ran for alderman in the city of Baldwin, and was an alderman there for 3 years, and ran twice. Won both times, of course. And then this position in the St. Louis County Council opened up, and so I ran for it, and I had a primary and a general election. I won both, of course. And then I've been there ever since, in 8 years, a little over 8 years now. So so that's kind of my history in that area, and just been trying to be a good leader, a good servant leader for the area, and tried to make West County the best place to live in the region.
Yeah. What in being a councilman, what have you kind of learned over these 8 years? I mean, that's there's a lot to St. Louis County. It's bigger than the city, really.
Yeah, we're 1 million people. St. Louis County is the largest county in the state. The GDP of the state about 25%. So, if it's not made here, sold here, invented here, it's probably not happening in the state of Missouri. And so with that power goes a lot of responsibility. And you have to make sure that we're attracting the right talent to the area, and that the quality of life is good, that it attracts the right talent, so that we can keep that momentum going.
Yeah. Well, you guys had a tough challenge during COVID too.
Right.
So Did you learn a lot through that?
Oh yeah, and we learned that don't let a good crisis go to waste, and that's been the mantra for my opponents on the council for many years during COVID. And as you know, we went to almost a full lockdown of the county. Businesses were shut down, restaurants were shut down. Everybody was scared of their shadow, and there wasn't a lot of reason not to be in the beginning, at least. And then as we, I think, wised up to what was going on, we started to try to relax some of these regulations, which were brought on by our health department, and they have that power to a certain extent, but in some cases they took too much power. And so us, the conservatives on the council, spent the rest of the time for the 2 years of COVID trying to rein in some of these mandates and lockdowns and business closings and such, just because everybody was afraid of a virus. And, I'll give the benefit of the doubt in the beginning. We didn't know what to expect. But like I said, as things went on and information got out, people started saying, no, we don't need to do this. We don't need to do that. That's waste of time. Let's, figure this out and make sure that our liberties are restored here in St. Louis County.
Yeah. Well, I appreciated your perspective very much, just because, as a small business owner, watching other small businesses be shut down, restaurants not being able to operate, that's terrible.
Right.
I think of those guys. I see them all the time because I've been in this area for over 20 years. So
Right.
you get to know all the small business owners around you, and people laugh when they go to lunch with me. I'll go to, whether it be a Bandanas next door or something like that. And, they'll be like, you must eat here a lot. I'm like, no, I've just been here 20 years and gotten to know everybody. So when I do eat here, I've gotten to know
Sure.
the waitresses that have been around that long and stuff.
And we had so many of those type of businesses that are family owned, and were basically given the choice. You either figure out how to do business a different way, such as drive up, drive through, DoorDash, all those kind of things, or you're probably not going to survive during COVID because everything was shut down.
Yeah.
And so I applaud the business owners that looked at their world at that time and said, hey, how can we survive? And we're going to have to do X, Y, and Z, and it may be totally different than what they were used to. And those are the ones that survived. The ones that said, no, I'm not going to do Dine and Dash, or I'm not going to do drive through, they're probably still closed in many cases. So I think it was there was some good that came out of it, but there's also a lot of things that I wish we didn't have to go through.
Yeah, sure. But I, again, appreciate your voice on the council. What made you want to, get into doing some politics? Was it, being the small business owner and being affected by it? I know that I've personally been more engaged as a small business owner as time has gone on. But what kind of got you involved?
Well, it's funny, getting me involved. I was always interested in politics, and again, my college degree was in politics. So, but where I got involved in the Baldwin Council was over the, if you remember, the Schnucks put a new store at the corner of Kerrs Mill and Clarkson. And it's one of their small stores. If you've driven by Marquette High School,
That's where I shop.
kind of catty corner. Well, that's close to my home, and so and it's also in the Baldwin city limits. And the alderwoman at that point in that time did not, or the people in that area felt they were not being represented properly, and she was in lockstep with the development, and didn't like the people in that area. Did not like what was happening, both on the Chesterfield side of the street as well as the Baldwin side of the street. So some people that knew me tapped me and said, hey, do you want to get involved and run against this person? We feel that you would represent us better, whatever it is. And so I looked at it and dealt with it and prayed about it and said, okay, I guess I'll jump in there. And I won. I was against the incumbent. I won by 19 votes. So, every vote counts out of about 2,000 votes. So I lost every precinct except the one closest to the Schnooks.
The one that mattered.
The one that mattered and the people that were most upset. And that I won so well there that carried me in the other precincts in that ward. So I got on the board that way. It was about looking at that and feeling that people needed representation. Unfortunately, by the time we ran the election and I got on the board, the project was already basically coming out of the ground. So, the planning and zoning issues and those kind of things were already settled. So the people that elected me turned to me and said, hey, would you help us, say, get better landscaping, fencing, lighting, things that they'll keep the intrusion of this property away from their homes. And there's a lot of homes that are built real close to that property. So if you drive up there today, a little factoid here is that the fence that goes all the way around that property is the largest fence in West County. And we had to change our zoning laws in Baldwin to accommodate that fence. So basically, we've got the largest fence you can put is 8 foot. So we put an 8-foot fence, but we put it on a 2-foot berm. So we got it up. So it's over 10 feet tall at the top of that fence. And that is, to this point, without any complaints that I know of, have kept the noise down, the lighting down, the look at, people didn't have to look at the back of their house. Yeah, they see a big fence, but they don't see a commercial place. And so I was able to do that. I was able to get them some more landscaping and things like that. And then the lighting was all changed from the original plan. So it went to a more downed light LED kind of thing instead of more tilted, which would have put a lot of ambient light in that area. And so there's things like that kept people happy. And that's kind of what you do when you're on these boards, is try to keep the most people happy. You don't keep everybody happy, but you try to keep most people happy.
Yeah.
So that's how I got involved in Baldwin. And then other things just kind of happened, like I said, with the opening of the opportunity in St. Louis County. The person I replaced had been on the council 22 years, and he decided, I'm done. He was going to retire, and he knew me, and we knew each other. And he says, hey, I'm not going to file on Monday. If you want to file, it's yours, So I filed, and 2 days later, 2 other people filed. So now we're off to the races. I thought I'd walk right on to the job, and that wasn't going to happen. So, but we ran a good race and won, and I have won ever since.
Yeah, well, again, I think it just shows how you've been listening to the people and those that, at least in my opinion, matter. So
right, and then with COVID brought out a lot of things, so a lot of kind of the dirty underbelly of politics in some cases. It brought out things that a lot of people were not aware of: how government works, how school districts work, how health departments work, and how the state interacts with all these entities. And we had people calling our office daily, during COVID, can't you tell the Rockwood School District to do this? Can't you tell Parkway to do this, or whatever it is? We're like, we don't have any jurisdiction, as a county government. The school districts have their own board. And remember that election you didn't vote in a couple Aprils ago? That was the one where you voted these people in that are in office now that are making decisions about your kids and all that whole thing. So we tried to educate people on how government works when it comes to that. And that brought out a good thing because we saw the need. And so I created a training program or a seminar program on teaching county government 101. So we went around to different organizations and had these seminars on how county government works. And it was eye-opening for a lot of people because they didn't know how things work.
Sure.
Who's in charge of who, all that kind of stuff, and where your money goes, and how much you pay in taxes and so on. So, so I look at it, when we have something as crazy as COVID, there's got to be some good that comes out of it, and I think there was some good.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that. I learned a lot about local government. I mean, I'd been involved a little bit beforehand. If you're familiar with Kirk Matthews, I was his treasurer, so I'd done some stuff behind the scenes, but had never fully engaged in, kind of really opened my eyes and my wife's eyes, and
Sure.
a lot of our friends. So
Speaking about things that maybe the citizens don't know, maybe we can back up a little bit and just I'm getting a phone call. Sorry about that, guys.
Don't answer it.
It's my wife. I'll ignore her. We back up a little bit and maybe just for people that are listening, maybe some younger members, 18, 19, 20, anybody that doesn't know, maybe explain a little bit, maybe one or two things that councilmen do,
Okay.
and then maybe the best way for people to interact with the councilman.
Right.
And what that looks like. What are a few things that what are one subject, two subjects that are necessary to bring to councilmen before you go anywhere else?
Sure. Well, county council is unique in that we basically are the governing body for the unincorporated portions of St. Louis County for the most part. We set the zoning, we set trash pickup, our county police patrol those areas for the most part. And then you have the other part of the county, which is set up as municipal governments. Places like Manchester, Baldwin, Ellisville, Town and Country, these kind of places. And they govern themselves. They have their own police force and so on. So the extent,
Sorry, and that's the aldermans. That's the board of aldermans
That's
in
the-
those
Correct.
municipalities.
right, and you elect those representatives if you live in those areas. So they take care of that. So especially in West County where you have so many municipalities, I don't get a lot of phone calls over the things that you would normally call your mayor or your alderman in your area about. The things I get calls about are the bigger issues, regional issues, things that are going on in unincorporated St. Louis County. Why is this major road not fixed properly, or why are my tax assessments going up, the way they are? Those kind of bigger issues that are countywide, or in the case of COVID, the health department has countywide jurisdiction, so they can make health decisions for everybody and go across those municipal lines. So they have a lot of power, and so we had a lot of calls about that. So where the county council comes in is when those issues come up. We have budget issues, as you've probably heard in the news. We've got a huge budget deficit, and we have to deal with that, and that helps the county government run. County government handles the things that the municipals don't handle, things like marriage licenses, the court system, our crime lab, SWAT team, helicopters, zoning matters, health issues, personal welfare issues. Those kind of things are handled at the county level. So it's finding that fine line, and a lot of people don't know where that is. And that's when they call us and they'll say, my neighbor's got a barking dog that keeps me up all night. Where do you live? Well, they tell us, no, well, you need to call this person or that person. We don't handle that kind of stuff, But if they're in unincorporated, then yes, I've got to figure out a way of helping them if that's the case. I'm just using that as an example, of course.
No, that was great.
no,
But for young people need to get involved because they're going to pay the most taxes in the future. They've got kids coming up in the area, maybe, so they're going to use the schools more. And they want to have a good future, and they want to have good jobs, and they want to be able to afford the things that St. Louis County provides and the lifestyle that we provide here. A lot of people don't realize that. I think you guys live west, right?
Mm-hmm.
You live west. I mean, when you travel around the county, and I do, and others do too, but we've got the best lifestyle here in West County. And what I call West County is anything west of 270, in my opinion. It's a great lifestyle, great school districts. Streets are maintained. Crime is down and low crime. Decent retail, things like that. Other parts of the county don't have those, or some of those are missing. So I try to remind that of people, and a lot of that is because we have good governments in this area that make sure that those things are viable for the rest of us.
Taken care of, yeah.
Yeah. So I tell young people to get involved by just taking an issue, whatever the issue may be, and just follow it until its end. Then you kind of see how all the players line up and the process that happens, whether it needs an ordinance passed or maybe it doesn't, maybe it's just shining a light on an issue. Young people tend to play in the Twitter realm, and that's fine, but that's not leadership.
Sure.
That's making noise. And sometimes that's useful. Many times it's not. It just confuses things and confuses other people. You just got to sometimes get your hands dirty and get involved in some things.
Yeah.
So you mentioned some top issues. I mean, in your last 8 years, what are some of the things that you have kind of proudly been affecting? Obviously, as an alderman, we heard about the fence. As a countyman, what are some of the things that you felt like over the last 8 years you've really were part of those things being accomplished?
Those are good questions. It's hard to go back. There's been so much. We meet every Tuesday night.
Yeah.
So sometimes our life goes from Tuesday to Tuesday, and so we'll deal with an issue on one Tuesday, and it's a whole different issue by the next Tuesday. Either with that issue, or because it's morphed into something else, or it's a totally different thing. I mean, we've gone from when I first got on the council, we had budget issues back then. We had scandals with the Stanger administration, money being spent poorly and in different things, people on the take. The county executive resigns and goes to jail. And we dealt with a lot of things and new county executives coming in, elections, business growth. We have a group in St. Louis in the region called the Economic Development Partnership, which is funded by the city and the county. And their job is to identify businesses to come in the region and move here. And if they need some kind of help in some way, to be able to put those deals together and attract good businesses. And some of the things that I've been proud of that have been attracted to West County has been the Bunge headquarters up here on Highway 40. Bunge, it's a strange name, but and I didn't know much about them before that, but basically they're a huge agricultural company, and they were based out of Iowa. And they had a footprint here, but it was small. And they decided to consolidate their headquarters from Iowa into here with what they had, and they built a brand new building right along Highway 40, about right at Timberlake.
That's a nice big building.
Oh, yeah.
Really beautiful.
Yeah. And they moved in prior to COVID, of course. Then the big thing we did just 2 years ago was the Gateway Studios that are being relocated. If anybody's driven out in Chesterfield Valley and they see these huge buildings going up, and it looks like NASA is moved in and they're going to build rockets, but no, it's going to be basically a place where performers like Britney Spears or whatever can have their stages built and rehearse there and before they go on a road show. So this company will design their whole stages and light shows and everything and be able to build it there and then load it on trucks and send it to, four corners of the world so that, Britney Spears can do her thing. So, or whoever's out there. So I'm probably dating myself with Britney.
That's okay.
She's still in the news.
She's still out there somewhat,
she's still in the news.
but that's what they do. And they're also going to do other things. And the funny thing is that they were attracted to this region. We gave them some incentives because other places were giving them some incentives. So we matched them on there. But the thing that made us different was Spirit Airport. And Spirit Airport, when they saw that this property that they wanted was right next to the airport, nobody can compete. The other places we were competing with Georgia and Tennessee, nobody had an airport. And they love that. So now the performers can fly into Spirit, literally get on a golf cart and drive over to
walk if they're brave enough.
Yeah. And go right into the studio, do their rehearsing and do their things, jump back on a plane and be out of there. And they just love that idea. So that's part of our infrastructure. Spirit Airport is owned by the county. And so we manage that in what's called an enterprise zone type of arrangement, where basically it's a break even. They make money off of tenants at the airport and gas. And so that pays for their staff and maintenance and things like that at the airport. So it's kind of a break even with our budget up there. We don't make money, but we don't lose money. And it provides basically it's anywhere from the second to the third largest or busiest airport in the state is what Spirit is. Another fun fact here is that our largest customer for gas is the United States Navy. So when you
figured that.
When you hear the air shows going on when there's not an air show, that's the Navy using us, flying in, filling up with gas, and flying out. And they're one of our biggest customers from the standpoint of gas. And we won that contract a number of years ago. And so I get calls about that sometimes. Oh, what's all this noise at the airport? You know, I said, that's the noise of freedom. So enjoy it, you know.
Exactly.
And I think we take them to Chick-fil-A while they're filling up. So
That's funny.
It's
My daughter appreciates it. She sees the jets and she always says, airplane.
yeah. And the air show is put on by a nonprofit organization, but they use the airport, and that they do that every 2 years because they want to use. They always want the Blue Angels, and so the Blue Angels fly a Boeing product, and Boeing is a big sponsor of the air show, and so we have to book the Blue Angels 2 and 3 years in advance, and so they can only come every 2 years. So that's why we don't have it every year going forward.
We were just talking about businesses coming in. I'd imagine, just I'm bringing up COVID again, but I would imagine maybe not that businesses coming in here want to know some assurances that maybe happened, things that happened in 2020, 2021 aren't necessarily going to happen the way that they did then in the future. As far as shutting down their businesses after they just moved into the state. Has that been brought up, or is that a concern of businesses being brought in here, or is it not a concern?
That's a good question. I'm not involved in the day-to-day workings of bringing businesses in here. We have another entity of the government that handles that. But I will say that even with the shutdowns that we had and the loss of liberty in many times, that we were probably better than most states. And a lot of that was dictated out of Jefferson City from the state level, and it trickled down to the county level and then down to the municipal level. So some places, as we saw California and the New Yorks of the world and places like that where everything was shut down and you couldn't move. Luckily, really the ones that really took the brunt of the shutdowns were anybody providing food services to people in the region, because they didn't know how to react to that. And food preparation and food licensing is under the purview of the health department. So as we provide a service, the county health department goes in and inspects those places. And so they had intimate knowledge of every restaurant out there and could go in there and say, hey, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. If we catch you again, you're shut down, and so they had a very strong influence over that. The normal businesses that are making widgets, in a place, the health department didn't have much say over those folks. And it was up to them whether they decided to shut down, or their employees said, hey, I'm not going to work because you're not, providing safety for us, or whatever it is. So I think the brunt of it were the places where, nail salons, barber shops, doctor's offices, restaurants, where you're coming, you have an intimate relationship with a customer in some manner. And those, I think, took the brunt of the shutdowns. But that has a trickle effect across the economy. When this company's shutting down and he buys his stuff from this woman over here in this company, well, now they're both affected, and you start doing that throughout the economy. And I think a lot of people got educated about that, and how we are so interrelated as an economy. The things you guys provide, in mortgages and things like that, affect the real estate business, which affects the title business, which affects inspectors. And, it's that whole ripple effect.
Absolutely.
Just in your own industry, much less outside of it.
Right.
So I think we learned a lot from that, hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And so recently you made a new announcement because you're moving into a new transition, or hoping to. So why don't you tell us about that?
Well, it's great. I'm glad you brought that up. I've decided to run for Missouri Senate, representing, again, the people of West St. Louis County. In 2020, it was what they call redistricting year, and where you sit down every 10 years and they decide what the House districts and the Senate districts will look like for the next 10 years. And so the 15th Senate district, which took in most of West County, but was centered more east of here. So that now has changed this past time. And basically where you guys are sitting here now, you're on the eastern boundary now, which you guys used to be more in the center of that Senate district. You're on the eastern boundary of that. So now everything's moved west, the district is kind of moved west and goes all the way out to the county line, out to Wildwood, Eureka, Chesterfield. And it used to end about Clarkson Road. So everything's moved west. And so I thought this was a great opportunity because I've represented these people for the last 8 years in almost the exact same footprint. So with the addition of a few precincts around here and a little bit east of here, everything else is pretty much the same. And they know me and know that hopefully I've done a good job for them. So I thought it would be a perfect fit at this point. I just won election in November for my third term. And so this provides another opportunity in that the election's not till next year, at the end of next year, in November of next year. So if I win, which I plan on doing with your help, then I would move on to the Senate, and then we'd have a special election to fill my seat on the council. And if I lose, then I'm still on the council for another 2 years. So it's kind of like a bye.
Yeah, win-win.
Yeah, in this case, either way I look at it. So I thought everything seemed to line up that way. And my kids are grown, and my wife and I are hitting that, we're empty nesters and hitting that part of our life that this would probably work out quite well for a while.
That's awesome.
I want to make sure that all of it lines up, and it looks like it is.
That's fun. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to do at the Senate level in Missouri. We got kind of a dysfunctional Senate right now. And, the old joke in Jeff City is the Senate's where good stuff goes to die. And whether it comes from the House side of the government for the governor or from the governor or wherever it comes from, the Senate seems to be this place where it kind of swirls around and falls apart. And so hopefully with my experience from the county, building coalitions, I've been bipartisan in many cases, bills I've gotten done bipartisan manner. I'm the vice chair of the county council, which is amazing because we're run by Democrats and I'm a Republican. And that's the first time we've ever had in the history of St. Louis County a bipartisan leadership team of our council. It's either if the chair is Democrat, the vice chair is Democrat. And they've never had it where we have a split party on the council.
How'd you manage that?
I can't tell you all my secrets. And this is the second time I've done it. The first time I did it, Rita Days, who is a councilwoman up around the UMSL area, she was a chair, and with her backing and her leadership, we were able to get me in as vice chair. So that was first time, and it's good for a year. And then we skipped a year where I wasn't in any leadership role, and then our current councilwoman, chairwoman, is on, and we were able to get me back elected as vice chair. So it's kind of been this way of doing it, and it seems to work for now.
Yeah.
And I hope to take that experience to Jeff City.
Do you have another team? Do you have a new team that's going to help you campaign, or is it the same team, same people?
Same plus new.
Okay.
I've got a gentleman that is my campaign manager and communications person. He's based out of Jeff City, and he handles my website and other things there, and advises me. He's been around a long time. I've got two very strong friends and political friends as well here in town that give me a lot of good advice. And I'm open to a lot of different people in my kitchen cabinet, so to speak. And I think that's been, I guess if you were to point one thing in my success is that I listen to all different viewpoints. My style, even with the county, has been when we hit a problem, I like to get as many views around the same table and physically around the same table and say, let's hear this out, pro, con, whatever it is. And then come up with, after listening to all sides, come up with a response or come up with a solution. Some people tend to, in politics, get themselves in a silo where they only hear what they want to hear. And I found that to be very detrimental to most politicians. Abraham Lincoln created a cabinet of people that hated him, in many cases. He had his enemies, political and other enemies, but yet he formed a cabinet and was able to use their advice on both sides and hopefully come up with a good response and a good way of doing business and governing, and I'm sure he wasn't right all the time, but it is a method because like I say, I find out in politics that people tend to surround themselves with yes people, and there's actually a political theory or phenomena happens called groupthink. And so you get a bunch of people that all think the same way or all agree with you because they don't want you to fire them or whatever the pressure is. And so they all go, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And everybody around the table all says, and they all could be wrong.
Right.
But because they fear their job or they fear their viewpoint not being heard, they give you wrong advice by just showing up, So I don't want, there's a lot of decisions we need to make as a state and a region and a county, and they're pretty important stuff. And you can't just have a political answer to everything. You got to have other answers as well. So
I like that.
Yeah, very much. I know a lot of people who were on the state level in the House that switched to Senate to try to bring some stability themselves too, because as you said, it's been kind of chaotic for a long time. A lot of good bills have gone, as you said, to die there. That would have, helped out, I think, especially St. Louis County.
Right.
So,
well, we got one bill that I hope goes a long way that was passed by the Senate, and if you have an older population that's listening to your show, which I hope you do, there was a bill that was passed this past session called SB 190, and basically it had two functions. One, it said that future Social Security benefits will not be taxed by the state as income. So that's a good thing for our seniors. So if you're getting $2,000 a month in Social Security, you're going to get the full $2,000 a month. You're not going to get something less because of the taxation. The other piece of the legislation is a tax credit on your property tax if you're above the age of 62. So what that means is that they'll pick a base year, probably next year, and say, okay, you're paying $5,000 in property tax on your house. Just pick a number. That's the most you'll pay as long as you live in that house will be that number. If it goes up to $5,500, then $500 will show up as a credit and you won't pay it, but it will be on your tax bill. So for people that are eligible for Social Security, which is 62 and above, can take this tax credit. And it's basically, they won't pay the growth of that. And as we've seen in the real estate business, every year, we're seeing 10% growth in the value in these prices, which usually sometimes translates into paying 10% more in your property tax.
yeah.
And so this is a way for those people so they don't get taxed out of their home as a senior.
Sure.
Going forward. But it only applies to people, A, that qualify for Social Security, and B, their primary home. They can't take their lake home or whatever. And they have to be, of course, the owner of that home. And it's only as good as they live in that home. If they move out, it ends.
Gotcha.
So, but if they move somewhere else in the county, they can apply for it at their new home as long as they meet the other eligibility qualifications. So that's a bill that I'm pushing through, the property tax credit, because every state under this SB 190, every state or every county in the state has to adopt it and buy into it, basically. And there's 120 some odd counties in the state, so every state has to pass the legislation that I'm working on, and if they want their seniors to get this credit.
Yeah, that's a great bill. I like it. So that really needs to. I get that question in real estate quite a bit. Hey, especially right now, as you said, with growth in houses. My property tax just came back on my house that I bought 2 years ago. It's they're saying my house is worth $80,000 more now, and I'm like, probably. Supply demand.
Right.
Got a supply problem, so the demand's high. It's keeping values up, and can I get it down? Unfortunately, no. And if you're on a fixed income, that's a big deal.
Right.
So,
right. And you got to have that predictability. If you're on a fixed income and you go from 5,000, and then it goes to 5,500, is it going to break most people? But some people, $500 is a bit, a couple electric payments, or it's the insurance on the home, or whatever it is, and everything keeps going up anyway, over and above what the tax rate is. And a lot of people also don't realize is that about 60% of that property tax that we all pay goes to the school districts. Then the next biggest place is usually fire districts in your area. The next one after that is special school district and the library and the museum history centers and the zoos and that kind of stuff. Those are all on the back. If you flip your bill over, are all itemized on the back of your bill, and you can see exactly the tax you pay, which makes up the total property tax.
I hate property taxes.
Well, and what that also means the next time that they see like, hey, we should pass this bill, it's just an extra half cent. Remember, right now it may just seem like a small amount, but that plus the next one that comes through, plus the next one.
Right.
And if you're not getting what you feel good service, I've said this to several people in our school district where they're like, I don't feel like they're listening to us. I said, well, there's an easy way to resolve that. Get enough people to vote no on their next couple of bond issues and things like that. And when they can't get more money, they're going to be forced to deal with what they got, and that'll force them down to have to do,
make some decisions.
Yeah, I mean, in our case, they're top heavy with administration, so maybe we need to get rid of some of those guys.
Right, and that's all the time. With government, when you get these things, it's they call it in the military mission creep, where you start out with this goal here, but over time it keeps moving up. And you go, well, we can spend more, we can do this, we can have this program and that program. It all still goes to the schools. It all still goes to the same pot, but it keeps building that pot and the demand. And then you say, no, we got to cut back. Oh, you think they took your left arm off, if you say you got to cut back even a little bit. So I think we found that out with COVID. I think the school districts now are on notice. Parents are waking up. And I hope to bring some legislation in the Senate if I'm elected that gives parents more choices in where they school their kids, where they send their kids. And minimally, every parent should have the ability to question every teacher, every administrator, every budget, every curriculum, every movie, every speaker that are being exposed to their kids. Think about it. If you go to a public school or even a private school, the teachers spend more time with those kids than you do as a parent on an hour-to-hour basis. You get them when they're sleeping, and a little bit before dinner and a little bit after dinner. They're with the school district. Somebody in that school district is touching that child, not physically, but touching that person's upbringing and education from 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe even earlier, to maybe 4 or 5 o'clock at night. And then you get them the rest of the time. So if they have that much influence on our children, you better know as a parent, is that the right influence? Are they teaching them the right values? Are they teaching them the right things that they need to know to grow and to be successful and to be live up to your standards and your values? It's your children, not theirs. And many school districts think it's their children, and we got to change that attitude in many of these school districts.
Well, it's also, it's monetarily transactional too. Like those parents are paying the school district. So there's a service provided. And if they're not happy with the service, you have every right to complain about the service, right?
Right. So. Well, it's funny because I grew up in private schools, in religious schools, and my parents worked different jobs, second jobs to put my sister and my brother and I through private schools. And they could pick up the phone and call the principal and say, we don't like this. And pretty quick things have changed, But for some reason in the public school system, you're kind of like a number. Your kids are a number. The parents are a number. And you say, I don't like what you're teaching me. And they're like, that's what the state tells us. That, so sorry. If you don't like it, hit the road.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, they don't have choices. They have to have public school system because they don't have the resources to go to the private system. And I think our public school systems need to be more like the private systems and to be more accountable to and they always talk stakeholders and shareholders. That's you. You're a parent. You're the biggest stakeholder out there. Because you've got that child and you don't have a second choice. You don't have a second chance with that child. If they spend a year teaching them some math that they'll never know, or understand, you've wasted a year,
right?
Of that child growing up and learning a skill that they will never, because they were taught that math skill or whatever it is wrong, or it was the new thing of the day of teaching. Now you got the kid confused. They may not pass a standardized test because the tests are not the same as what they taught in school. All that thing. It just kind of mushrooms after a while. So I feel sorry for a lot of parents that go through these programs and all this kind of stuff, and then they figure out my kid is 2 years behind, which is kind of the COVID thing right now. The kids are 2 years behind. They moved up in grade, but they're basically at the level they were before COVID in many cases. And I don't know if they'll ever be able to catch up from that. So,
No.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Reading, especially, I know that reading comprehension, all that stuff is greatly affected, which
Well-
affects kids' emotions, affects, like, if you know you're supposed to know something and you don't know it, that would probably make you angry. So there's so much stuff besides just not knowing something that is going to follow with all these kids. So,
and a lot of the kids are emotionally
stunted.
Stunted, yes, that's a good word. And I don't know if we'll pull out of that. And you have so much mental, because of that, you've got a lot of mental issues going on with our kids in their schools and trying to learn on a laptop during COVID. And Rockwood was the poster child for it. It was a national story where the teacher said some of the kids saw the assignment on their laptop and said, "Don't tell your parents what we're teaching you." Basically, I mean that went around the world.
Yeah.
And that's when a lot of these parents kind of came out of nowhere and started complaining at the school district board meetings, and that's where that movement really got started, and it basically started here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No. And I can say as a dad of 6 and all of them in Rockwood. So since we mentioned it, yeah, I saw the different effects. I had some that were more affected than others. When you talked about math, I had a couple that, could not learn online math. I literally had to bring one and she was failing. I literally want to bring her here in my office and would do math classes with her, 3 times a week, 2 hours at a time, where I would just stop my job and have to go be teacher
Right.
for 2 hours. And I'm thinking to myself, not that I was blaming everybody, because as you said, when COVID first came out, I understood, but I was thinking to myself, I'm paying these people and I'm not getting a service back. I'm actually working twice as hard now.
Right.
And they're getting to take extra time off and all this other stuff. And I'm working 3 times harder.
Right.
So,
right. And I, your story is not different than a lot of people out there. I mean, it was, parents were trying to teach Common Core math and didn't know what Common Core math is, because that's what
That changed.
Like suddenly, how
grew up with
come math is different? We all grew up with, the math that we've always learned, whether it be multiplication tables or dividing and subtracting and fractions and things. And now suddenly it's all different. You got to go through these, 10 steps that normally would have been 2 steps.
Yeah. Show your work too.
Yeah, and show your work, and a lot of stuff you can do in your head. No, they don't want to do that. You got to put it on paper. So even the parents couldn't help them in many cases. So now you got frustrated kids, you got frustrated parents. Kids are failing. Kids are stressed. They give up. And now you start to lose them. You go from math to reading to spelling, and you're just, it's a snowball effect.
Yeah. It was tough. It was tough.
Yeah.
well, I'm hoping that more people like yourself get involved in our state politics so we can see these changes. Because, just like you mentioned Common Core, some of this stuff comes down from these unions pushing it on to the associations. And if you have a strong state, we've seen where states like Texas have said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to, Missouri's not exactly a small state. Hopefully we can, build up that ability where we can say we're not going to allow that in here. So we also saw from this past year the bill on the I want to call it soft porn books that were in schools that were allowed. We got a bill passed. I remember personally, my wife and several people went to the board meetings and presented. I think there was like 3 or 4 books that were pretty outright. I mean, these were egregious. We're not talking borderline books. We're talking graphic pictures, and these were in elementary and middle schools of a good school district. They presented them. They didn't go anywhere. That bill passes. Not only were all those stripped, but there was like over 50 bucks. I mean, we just had found 3 or 4. Apparently, there were over 50 that met the qualifications of the bill.
Right.
That's scary.
And it is. And you know, I think, like say, COVID exposed a dark underside on a lot of things, and some of these things that have been going on in the schools, in our libraries, in our community, were now exposed. Because now you got people on the internet looking around, going to meetings, attending meetings. All the meetings become virtual, so that opens up a whole good and bad. Our meetings have been virtual throughout the whole COVID crisis. So now people are going, oh, I didn't know we had a county council. And now I can watch them on Tuesday night, you know, and we had, 50, 60 speakers coming and complaining and offering opinions on everything. And I mean, anything and everything during that period of time. And I think they'll go down in history as some of the craziest meetings in some cases, depending on the subject matter that we were talking about, whether it was vaccinations, masks, spaceships, you name it.
Oh, yeah.
You guys lost the filter. It was like virtual meetings let everybody in, right?
Right. Everybody saw this. I think it's because there's so much frustration out there. They didn't know where to let this pressure, how do you vent this pressure? And so we had people, that would read things, see things in the news, see things in their schools, and then Tuesday night they'd get it all stored up and they'd come and we give them 3 minutes, and they'd pack that 3 minutes, and we'd have 50 people at 3 minutes apiece. So we would be there for a long time.
I watched a lot of those meetings.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of them.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think it was good for the community, the community as a whole, to kind of vent the frustrations. Some of my colleagues saw it as a huge waste of time and wanted to shut it down many times. But I actually kind of enjoyed it. I like to hear the different viewpoints. I like to hear some of them, were out there. Others seem to be right on point. And so you got to separate the good from the bad, but you listen to everybody, because if we don't, what's our Constitution for? Our Constitution says you can air your grievances to your government. Okay, well, that's probably the best, easiest way of doing it. Come before your government and say, I don't agree with XYZ. And so if you shut that down, which some of my colleagues tried to do, then it even stirred them up even more.
Right.
Now you're taking away their freedom of speech.
Without representation.
Yeah, taxation without representation, and those kind of things. And people, so by doing that, and we're one of the few counties in the state that actually has a public forum as part of our meeting. Everybody thinks it's a given. You can't go down in the city of St. Louis and stand up at a Board of Aldermen meeting and tell them how you hate this or that. You can't go to Jeff City and stand in the gallery and yell, I hate this and hate that, Those don't happen unless it's St. Louis County. And so, we give them 3 minutes and we stick to the 3 minutes, and you got to talk fast. So
Get all your information out. Get all that heat off your chest.
that's right. That's right. Get it out there.
That's awesome. All very good stuff.
It is,
Yeah.
man. So how if people want to support you? Our listeners are listening in. We got a lot of people from the St. Louis area who will probably want to support you. What's the best way they can do it to help you out with your run, get involved, maybe some boots on the ground? Also, financially, this stuff costs money.
Oh, yeah, it does. A lot of money. And so you can go to my website, which is markformissouri.com. Okay. And there's some links on there where you can give me money, give me comments, like it. We love it. If you like what you see, send it to your friends. You can do that, or you can send, if you're old school and want to write checks, you can go to send us a check at Citizens to elect Mark Harder, and that is P.O. Box 7701, Chesterfield, Missouri 63006.
I'll tell you what. We'll put both of those. We'll put that website, and then for you when we get done today, give me the information. We'll write that down real quick, and we'll make sure we put that in the show notes. So anybody that wants to get to those, all they can do is click down on the show notes, click right over. It'll take them straight to your website, or they can copy that address and be able to write a check and send it in. So
Yeah.
and
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, we want good people like yourself to win. I personally have appreciated your representation for our area, and I'm happy you're here. Okay. So
thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
steady Mark. You're a steady guy, I can tell. So if you want a steady senator, get Mark in there.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Very much. Well, hey, thanks again for listening in to this episode of Triple Play. Don't forget to
like and subscribe.
That's right. Hey, and by the way, get us over that 20,000 hump, please. That'd be awesome.
Turn your notifications on.
Yeah, turn them on so you know when we drop them. We're dropping. If you haven't paid attention, we're dropping every night, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Central Time. So there's always going to be something Monday through Friday that drops, whether it's a full episode or a teaser of one of our past ones, or maybe behind the scenes stuff that we've had some of our fun ball players and stuff that we've had some cool conversations with that we put out there. So
we'll
enjoy
get some
them.
more. We got a remote software going to be.
Yep,
now.
We're gonna be cranking and get some more people coming. So we appreciate it, and we'll catch you next episode.
On screen. See.
Yeah.
Thank you.